welcome to Total College Football, the perfect show for any and every college football fan. I'm your host, Travis May, and you can find me on Twitter at FF_TravisM. And I'm joined again by my co-host, Stefan Lako. You can find him at Stefan Lako. That's Lako. And on Total College Football, if you're new here, we cover the sport from top to bottom, from win totals to key matchups, from freshman stars to NFL draft breakdowns. It's all here on Total College Football. Everything, the best of the best from the best sport ever created. Stefan, how are you doing? Are you ready for college football to just kick off?
Dude, I was driving home from volleyball tonight. I live right outside Boulder, and they have the big signs up. And there's like the perfect sunset, the Flatiron Mountains right there. And it said,
Nice.
Game day tomorrow, traffic alert. And I was like, yes, we're here. There's going to be traffic jams all over the place, but it's worth it because college football is back. There were some North Dakota State fans at the place where I play volleyball, like just walking around in their jerseys. I was like, we're here, man. Like the traveling team is here. I wanted to go talk shit to them, but I didn't. But yeah, it's here. I'm so excited for college football to finally be in our backyard. We've been waiting a long time for it. And I just love that we get to cover it from such a unique angle where we can talk about like we can really nerd out on specific stats and maybe players that go unnoticed, but we can also tackle some of the biggest games, which is what we're going to be doing tonight as well, which is super fun. So yeah, really excited to talk college football with you because there's so much to get into. And I haven't really heard your thoughts on a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. So super excited to hear from you on, Florida State, Georgia, Clemson, some of the big names of that have either just had big matchups or about to have big matchups.
Yeah, and it's not like the season actually hasn't started already.
Right,
It has.
right.
I mean, like it's just the full slate. Dust till dawn pretty much with the game day coverage and everything and beyond because we'll always have one game going till the 2 a.m. now, which is fantastic. So
Yes,
we're here, and so it just feels good to finally do that. But I guess with this first kind of segment here, just want to dive into Florida State and Georgia Tech. And I know if you listen to a lot of shows, they've already kind of broken down the game, and we can talk about a few things within that game. But I think I want to talk about implications moving forward for the ACC and even what this means for the college football playoff too, because I think in the inaugural 12-team football college football playoff, when one of the teams that was in the mix to win the ACC doesn't look real, like doesn't look like they're a real contender. Now there's 2 or 3 other teams that they might actually make the championship game, and if they do, they just have to win one game in the in. Versus, hey, this looks like maybe a 2 or 3 max kind of situation with Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. Hey, Florida State's not real. That really opens things up. So let's talk about before we jump into the odds necessarily. Let's talk about the game because I was disappointed in DJ U. I was disappointed in the wide receivers. I was disappointed in a lot of things for Florida State. But was there something that stood out more to you that you were just disappointed in with Florida State? Because they're supposed to be very good still. Yes, they lost some talent to the NFL, but they weren't completely ripped apart. So what disappointed you the most, given that Florida State was supposed to be a top 10 team?
Yeah, what disappointed me the most, Travis, is that I had a future bet on Florida State to make the ACC final. And it's not dead yet, but it sure doesn't feel good. No, honestly, that first drive, they looked great. They were running the football well. They were, using that the short passing game. And then, Georgia Tech decided to adjust, which they should. And what disappointed me the most was that Norvell didn't adjust. And I guess I was hoping that DJU would have developed a little bit more confidence or even just the willingness to throw across the middle occasionally. And he just continues to refuse to. I hoped that moving to Florida State with Norvell, we saw, you and I are not huge Coleman fans, but he's willing to let his quarterbacks throw risky balls. He's willing to go out there and make those tough decisions. But I didn't see DJU willing to do that. And I think, just the disappointment with Norvell not changing up his approach on offense is probably what left me the most disappointed because I was on the under in that game. And after both teams' first drive, I was getting a little bit nervous. I was like, oh, these teams are here to play some offense. I didn't expect this. But no, they didn't. And it was,
No.
really unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think Georgia Tech had a great game plan. They realized, look, we don't like the matchups. If they get in a rhythm of rushing the passer and Haynes King is under pressure and we throw a bunch of interceptions like Haynes King did last year, we're
Game.
done. You
Yeah.
know, and so they were just like, you know what, we're just not going to pass. We're going to run the ball almost 40 times and pass 16 times for the whole game, and that didn't allow Patrick Payton, Marvin Jones Jr., any of the talented players up front to get in kind of a rhythm. So that I don't believe, based on multiple charting services, Patrick Payton even had a pressure in the game,
That's
which
crazy.
that's wild because he's supposed to be this difference maker. But when you can't get in a rhythm and you're not expecting to even have to rush the passer, but no, I was like, oh, I got to set the edge here. Your first step is different, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
like he and Marvin Jones Jr., who had transferred over from Georgia, pedigree guy there, did not do anything. And so
That was
that
maybe
was
my second answer to your question about the biggest disappointment. I was really excited to watch Marvin play, and I don't know if I heard his name mentioned much at all
no.
in the
Yeah.
telecast. That was pretty
I mean, he had
disappointing.
like 2 tackles
Yeah.
and yeah, so it was just not what many people expected. So what that means moving forward, let's jump into some of the odds because that changes things in my view. Because I guess it's just one successfully executed game plan, but Florida State's no longer, in the mix to even be the favorite, and they dropped all the way down, depending on the book that you use. It's like even with NC State to win the ACC championship. So now it's Clemson and Miami right there neck and neck, and Florida State way down, what next to, and I say way down, but third and fourth for NC State. And then there's Louisville, who's in the mix. A shout out Jeff Braun, who did good things for my Purdue Boilermakers.
That's
And
right.
then Virginia Tech, and that offense that could be really fun there with Kyron Drones at quarterback. But I still think that, I know it's one game, but I still think that Florida State should be a notch ahead of NC State. But where do you think, is there something off with these odds? Because Clemson's plus 300, Miami's plus 350, Florida State and NC State plus 600, and you've got Louisville 850, Virginia Tech 950. Anything that kind of stands out is off when you look at those odds?
I think the amount of movement that we saw was only between the top 3 teams. Clemson and Miami's numbers got, the odds are more favorable for them to win now, and Florida State went down, and then the other 3, NC State, Louisville, and Virginia Tech, pretty much remained unchanged. So if you had a future bet on Virginia Tech, which I do, that hasn't changed at all. I lost no value, gained no value. But those first 3 teams, obviously Florida State dropping significantly with that loss. But to me, I almost want to bet Florida State again, even though I think they
Double
were
down.
terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm still not a believer in Miami to have a consistent season. I think their highs are going to be incredible, but I think they're going to have maybe not a lot of lows, but enough lows that they might pick up 3 or 4 losses, and that might not be good enough to actually win, or they might be good enough to get in, but I still think it's going to take a lot for any team to separate themselves. And so even though this was a conference loss for Florida State, I don't actually hate doubling down on them. I mean, I hate doubling down because it's kind of like, man, why did I already invest this money when I get these much better odds now? But also
Yeah.
with Clemson, and we'll talk about them a little bit later, but I'm still not a huge believer. So to me, Virginia Tech hasn't moved at all, so I'm just going to stick there. But maybe I sprinkle a little bit on Florida State again because I'm a sucker and I still want to believe in DJU. I still want to believe in this Norvell team. How about you? Anything interesting? And then I do want to talk for just a second about DJU himself, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's good with me. I mean, I feel like he's been the center of a lot of conversations over the past few years. But I think to me, it is surprising a little bit that the other programs aren't kind of moving up because we kind of knew that one of the programs up top, one of the 3, was going to disappoint, or it wasn't going to be that 3 were going to make the championship, and so we knew that one was going to disappoint. And if it is Florida State, okay. But if it's actually that 2 of 3 or 3 of
Right.
3
Right.
disappoint up top, and that's very much in the cards, then all of a sudden Virginia Tech at plus 950 looks really fun to me. And
Yeah.
Kyron Drones, when he's on, he's absolutely on. And the wide receiver trio that they have now with Ali Jennings coming back, Daquan Felton, who emerged last year, Jalen Lane, who's who's kind of proven. They have some really fun offensive weapons. And then on defense, they lost some pass rush, but I still like a few of the players to step up there too. So up and down the roster, Virginia Tech at, almost 10-1. That seems pretty enticing when I look at the questions I still have with Miami. And I know the talent depth with Clemson is there, but you don't have to go too far on that roster to get to like a bunch of freshmen, because
Sure.
just how they have structured their team, especially on the back end.
Yeah. The interesting thing, because I want to take it back, like I said, the odds haven't changed for these teams, but Virginia Tech and these other teams that haven't played yet, like Florida State already has a conference loss. They don't. So they are already statistically more likely to surpass Florida State. So that's a good thing. So maybe going down on Virginia, that's a weird thing to say. Maybe betting on Virginia Tech yet again is not the worst idea in the world. Let's talk a little bit about DJU. I've got pulled up. For those of you listening on podcasts, do highly recommend checking us out on YouTube, Total College Football, where we always have some great graphics for you. Up right now, we have DJ Uiagalelei's pretty much like his statistical output year to year from his first couple years at Clemson, then to Oregon State, and now at Florida State. And one of the things that is not surprising at all, but something that I think we need to talk about, is just this lack of willingness, either on his part or the coaching staff, to let him really operate with the entire football field as his like hunting ground. Like he pretty much plays it short and to the sidelines, like nothing deep over the middle, nothing intermediate over the middle. It's all short. And to me, like that's a concern. Like, can you speak to this? Can you talk to me about what you see and why you think Florida State was willing to like go all in with DJU this year if they didn't think they could change him? Or am I reading too much into one game?
I think it's potentially reading a little too much into one game, but yeah, I don't know.
How dare you, Travis?
His shot selection though was at least suspect, like because he opened things up a little bit last year when he was playing for Oregon State. He wasn't launching the ball, way down the field, but it was not what we saw 2 years ago when he kind of got 3 years ago when he really got the yips in his kind of bad season for Clemson in 2021. And so it wasn't like that bad where it was just like everything was underneath, but like his average at the target was actually like 2.5 yards deeper downfield last season for Oregon State. But then this week it was a bunch of putt stuff. It was actually like his lowest ADOT dating back to, I guess the window I described, like the back half of 2021, I believe, was when we really saw him kind of just, I can't make anything happen, so I've just got to go short or like bulldoze some people. So I think he just needs to get his confidence back. He's kind of always been a player that if he's confident, if he's comfortable, he's succeeding. But if he's not, he can really get in his own head.
I think one of my other concerns too, like you mentioned the bulldozing, like, and I know sacks count against rushing yards, but like his average rushing attempt is less than 3 yards a carry. It's like 2.6 yards a carry. Like it's not like it's not like he's adding a lot with the running game. Like
no, and he's really slow actually.
Yeah,
he's quite slow. So
it's unsettling. Why were we so high on him as a recruit?
Because he has a rocket arm. He's massive, like 6'4", 250 pounds, and he was that big as like an 18-year-old. Yeah. So he had like all the fun traits. He just kind of never really put it together, I think, upstairs in his head, like to just be like that, just assassin to launch downfield, trust the traits on a consistent basis. And I think we kind of got our hopes up because he got back to that some last year. Even kind of YOLO balling a little bit too much at times because his completion rate fell like below 60%, I think, down the stretch. But he just needs to get there with the wide receivers. And the wide receivers, I still believe in Malik Benson to be talented. I still think Ja'Kai Douglas and Jalen Brown, even the transfer from LSU, can be decent for them. So
what about Hakeem? What the 5-star, 4-star phenom last year?
All off season. I mean, I cover the sport full time now, and I live in the weeds, and there was not enough confidence that he is. I mean, similar to like Nick Harbor, like they're super traitsy guys. He's not as fast as Harbor at South Carolina, but super traitsy, like 5-star talents that just haven't really figured out the intricacies of the game. And so I think once he does, he might have another weapon there that has a higher upside, but we just need to see it on a consistent basis from the entire offense. And
Yeah,
we need to see it soon. So,
right.
I mean, they'll have one more game where they should win. I guess it's Boston College this week, but man, they really, really need to ramp things up quickly.
Yeah. Speaking of ramping things up quickly, the college football season did not delay in serving up what could be one of the great matchups of the season as Clemson take on Georgia in Atlanta, noon Eastern on Saturday. This Saturday, like we're days away from this epic game. Georgia favored by 13.5 points. Total is pretty low at 48.5, which is to be expected, I think. Clemson comes in on the money line at plus 400, so quite a dog. But what an exciting matchup seeing these two teams. Clemson, it's not that long ago that they were national championship winning caliber teams. Georgia, of course, not much more recent with their back-to-backs. Here they are. Do you think this number should be this big? And then also, I just want to hear some of the key matchups and some of the things you're looking for each of these teams. We'll jump into all of that, but just your quick off the cuff, like, what's your thought on this game?
I think, I mean, I would be really surprised if Clemson won. It's like the most surprising outcome is a
That plus
Clemson victory.
400 is not tempting you.
That is not tempting me. No.
Yeah.
I don't really like that at all. But 2 touchdowns in this matchup, even the last time they played, it was like September 2021 when DJ U just kind of first got the yips because that was a monstrous defense that
was also week 1, right?
Yeah, it was opening the season. It was like the
6-6.
final score was like it was basically like 0.5 to 0. It was an ugly non-offensive game because I don't know if you remember this, but JT Daniels was actually the starting quarterback at the time for Georgia, and so they couldn't move the ball downfield at all. But it's been it's kind of crazy. It's already been that long, but I don't see a ton of points, and I could see this being within 2 touchdowns. Like if the hook was on the other side of 14, it would be a no-brainer, smash that every time. But I still could see it being tighter than 13.5. I could see it being annoying and actually being right at 13, or being like right at 10 via some backdoor late nonsense. So I don't like. If I'm going to go for it, I would actually take like Clemson plus 13.5, but not be like super confident about it. Low units play.
So here's a gross question that like real proper gamblers would never consider this, but I'm not that. I live life by my own drumbeat. How about a Georgia or maybe like Clemson plus 17 and same game parlayed with like the total of like 54.5 or something like that. Like,
oh man, that'd be
both.
No,
and get it right around minus 115.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I couldn't do it because I almost want to go under the total too, just because I think that both the
you tease the
defenses
total up and you tease Clemson.
I don't know.
Like,
I guess,
so much.
But yeah, because it's like I'm not super confident that I mean, like Carson Beck is a Heisman candidate and he can toss the ball around, but Clemson's defense is really tough too. So I don't have like super strong plays on this. If I'm gonna go with something, I'll go plus 13.5 for Clemson, but not like incredibly confident. Again, low units play. But for me, the biggest thing that Georgia has to do, and we're so used to Georgia having all these ridiculous like pass rushing monsters up front, right? And so they have a bunch of talent. They have a bunch of 5-stars. They have like one of the most talented rosters in the country. That's not up for debate. But when you dive into the numbers, it's like Michael Williams is a really efficient pass rusher. He's going to be like a potential early first-round pick next year. Jalen Walker, who's like this hybrid edge / linebacker, he can do anything, line up anywhere, and he's going to be more off ball this year. He can actually get off after the passer as well. And Warren Brinson can too, okay, from an interior perspective, but outside of that, they have very little proven returning production in terms of efficient pass rush, which is really strange for a Georgia defense, And so But if they do get pressure on Cade Klubnik, the game's over in the biggest way, because Cade Klubnik, his drop off in offensive efficiency, I just wrote this up today at izzysports.com, drops. His completion rate drops from 72% to below 38% when he's under pressure.
Say that again. Can you please say that again?
Slower here. When he
because that's
is
insane.
under pressure, I mean, it's one of the most steep drop-offs in efficiency across the board. There's several key stats here I'll mention. So his completion rate when not pressured is 72%. A lot of it's because it's a lot of dink and dunk stuff, but when he is pressured, below 38% completion rate. And his kept clean numbers in terms of touchdowns and interceptions, 15-3. But when he's facing pressure, 4 passing touchdowns to 6 interceptions. And the yards per attempt drops by more than 2 yards, all the way down to 4.5 yards per attempt when he is under pressure. And when you look at his like NFL passer rating, which is, just kind of like a good collective way to view passing success, the passer rating assigned to an incomplete pass is 39.6. Perfect passer rating is 158.3. But his passer rating when under pressure is 43.2. So he's almost better off chucking it in the freaking dirt than trying to attempt to pass when under pressure. So if Klubnik is under pressure throughout the game, it's over and it's going to be worse than 2 touchdowns. But Georgia has to do it. It's not just a given.
Yeah, so I have a question about that, because we have Cade Klubnik, first-year starter last year, also with a new offensive coordinator in Garrett Riley. Now they're both entering their second year. Do you think Cade Klubnik, you don't realize this, Travis, but he won back-to-back Heisman's in my first dynasty in EA football.
I was like, where's he going with this?
So, like, clearly the skills are there. No, but Cade Klubnik is a guy who highly touted recruit. People were excited about him being able to take on this role. And there are expectations that Cade Klubnik is good enough to bring this Clemson team to the playoff. Do you think he can elevate his game to get over this pressure? What is it, the yips? I mean, I don't know what it is.
I don't think it's a pretty consistent issue. It's pretty, it's like, even dating back to, I don't know, it was like the All-American Bowl that he was in. He looked great when he was clean. And when you put him on, like, if you put him on boot and he's just got like free space in front of him, he actually can throw really well on the move even. In fact, his first career touchdown for Clemson was an intentional boot where they put him in motion and he just dime in the end zone. So he can do that really well, but they've got to get creative with him, really open the offense up and let Garrett Riley actually call his offense. Please.
Do you think Dabo's going to let that happen? Because I don't.
I hope so, and my hope lies within the wide receiver talent that is there. And if Antonio Williams, I'm so tired of people crapping on Clemson's wide receivers. Like the 2 freshmen they brought in this year are phenomenal. Antonio Williams, when he's healthy, is amazing, and so if he does stay healthy, he's going to be kind of a baller too. They've got a few different options there, and even Browning, still a tight end, is trustworthy as well. So if they just open it up and give him some space, get him in motion outside of the pocket to avoid some pressure, getting creative, man, that's what it's going to take. That's really what it's going to take. But
and to be honest with you, Travis, that's why I kind of lean on the under for Clemson and no on to make the playoff, because I don't think Dabo's going to do it. I think he's going to get stuck in his ways and he's going to refuse to open it up, and it's going to cost them.
And that's definitely in the cards. But
and maybe that's just my fear, just seeing how inept their offense has been the last few years, and maybe he sees that too and he's willing to change. I'm just going to have to see it before I believe it. But I also agree with you that 13.5 is a real big number in a game that I think is going to be low scoring.
Yeah, it's tough because the defense, one of the things you had on the slide just there was Peter Woods and company actually being able to disrupt in this game. That's one of the other key matchups, not just the pass rush situation, getting after Klubnik, but the pass rush situation for Clemson getting after Carson Beck, who could be a Heisman winning quarterback. And that front four for Clemson, and even beyond that, they've got some really fun talent. But Peter Woods can line up in any pre-snap position, outside the tackle, over the tackle, A or B gap. It does not matter. He's going to get pressure. He's one of the best players in the country. Looks like a lock to be a 2026 first round pick. He's just a sophomore, but one of the best players in the entire
That's
sport.
insane.
And so Peyton Page as well. And what makes him really good is the surrounding cast is really good typically as well. But Peyton Page and DeMonte Capehart are really fun. They're both like 310 plus, but they're faster than they should be, more flexible than they should be, and stronger. Well, as strong as you might imagine they could be at 6'4", 310, 315, whatever it is. But
I cannot actually imagine that. Travis.
No, I can't either. They would throw me 10 feet. But I mean, they dominate in like both the A and B gaps, especially kind of B gap rushing and run defense, even taking on two gaps. So that's a problem. And then you have TJ Parker off the edge, who is also just a sophomore. And actually last year, he was a wrecking ball, like showing like decent technique, having a high snap count, staying on the field a lot, and posting efficiency as a pass rusher, having a pass rush. I always struggle to say the pass rush pressure rate. It's almost 15% himself. So like that front four is really tough. And I know Georgia returns a ton of experience on their offensive line. They're really only truly replacing Cedric Van Pran last year at center with Jared Wilson, who has been questionable and has been struggling with an issue in camp. But he's on the call today. I think he's good to go. And so it looks promising for them to hold up, but it's not, again, not a given for Georgia to hold up against what might be one of the top 5 defensive fronts in the game. And the depth behind those starting 5 for Georgia is actually a bunch of youth. Like Kirby Smart has actually been on record multiple times this offseason talking about the lack of depth on both the defensive line and offensive line for Georgia versus, what they're typically used to. It's still better than everybody else's probably, but it's just not necessarily what Kirby Smart is used to. So I think the defense is still elite. I think the offensive line is still fine and still good. But it's just not a given. And another area that's not a given, like the first point you had for Georgia is depth at offensive skill position here.
Travis Etienne, we don't know if he's going to be playing this weekend. I'm nervous about that. Like they are deep at tight end, but are they deep anywhere else? Like wide receiver is a question to me. Running back's a question to me.
Roderick Robinson's going to miss time due to a surgery with his turf toe. And I know they have Cash Jones. They have Branson Robinson coming off of his injury. Now he's healthy. And Trevor Etienne should be the face of the offense. Like he should be in the mix to be in the Heisman conversation probably by the season's end because he's going to be the feature back when he's 100% himself. But the wide receivers are a question for me because Georgia's missing Brock Bowers, Ra Thomas because he got dismissed, Alad McConkey, Marcus Rosemi, Jock Saint. Like they're like 4 out of 5 top receiving options for Georgia last year are no longer there. And so I know you do have Dylan Bell. You do have oh my gosh, Dominic Levitt in the slot. You have transfers in Colby Young and London Humphreys, who Colby Young's a size freak who is a mismatch nightmare for red zone stuff. London Humphreys is a speedster. Arian Smith is still there. He's also a speedster. You have a good mix of playmakers, but you don't have a lot of returning experience in production. So I'm just interested to see how that group faces off against kind of a younger Clemson secondary. The back end is older in terms of their safeties, but last season, like Avian Terrell and Khalil Barnes saw a good amount of snaps as true freshmen, but they're just sophomores. And so seeing how those younger players match up on the perimeter and in the slot for Clemson against the again, unproven set of wide receivers for Georgia, it's just neither side. It's a given, which is why there's more questions around this game that I think people are ready to acknowledge, which is why that 2 touchdown spread is just a little aggressive for me.
Yeah, to me it feels like, and I'm guilty of this, so like hand is raised. But like to me, it's like Georgia, perennial powerhouse recently. Like I'm talking like recency bias. Even last year, they didn't make it to the playoff, but they were the 5th, 6th best team in the country. They were probably the best team in the country.
I mean, undefeated season for a regular season for the 3rd time in a row. Like that's decent, right? I think that's okay.
Yeah. So like You got Georgia, and then Clemson, who all we hear about, and I'm the one screaming the loudest about it, is how Dabo won't change. He won't adapt. He won't address the transfer portal. He seems to be kind of losing a step. But when you break down the game, like player analysis, who they've got out there, to your point, there are a lot more questions. It's probably a little bit closer than people want to admit.
Yeah, exactly. And because Clemson's just been a punching bag, but even in their down year, quote unquote down year, they still go 9-4. Like, and it was the worst season, worst record that they'd had since I want to say 2010 ish. I think it was like Dabo's second season that they were maybe 6-7 or something, like that one year where they, but it's been over a decade since they've been even 9-4, which is pretty incredible. Like that's a wild run for Clemson.
Absolutely. I remember when like NC State Clemson, it was like that was like an equal playing field, like growing up as an NC State fan. One quick question before we move on. Is Carson Beck, you mentioned him as a potential Heisman hopeful. We talked about him last week as, probably most likely the number one quarterback taken in next year's draft. Look at this picture I have of him up here. Can I believe in this guy? Like, look at him. It's hard for me to see that man. I'm talking to you, Carson Beck. No, I just struggle to know, like, is it the system with the offensive line and such a strong defense? Like, I don't feel like I look at him and I think, wow, yeah, that dude is who I want for my NFL franchise.
Based on the numbers that matter, last year he was a top 5 quarterback just about any way that you want to slice it, especially like through the end of the regular season when you're looking at similar sample sizes across all the passers in the country. He was just one of the best, and so it's really hard to argue with. Like, just about every single measure, he's top 10, 15 that matters, and so I think he's right there. I know he's got a strong supporting cast there with him as well, but he's not Stetson Bennett. He has better traits than Bennett did, and so I think that Beck is going to be a real decent NFL starter one day.
Oh, wow. Okay, I like that. I mean, if he's going to go number one, or at least the first quarterback, you better hope he's a starter, I guess. But I kind of just feel a little bit lower on this quarterback class than maybe some of the others, possibly because I'm not extremely high on Carson Beck. You've lowered me on Shedeur Sanders. I love Quinn Ewers, but I mean, that's only one dude. So it'll be interesting to see what does take place. Travis, here we go. Are you ready for this part?
I don't know. I actually don't know. I don't know where we're going. So we'll
You're
see.
Ready. We are.
I'm not going to say the second part.
We are.
I am not.
I'm
not. Boiler up. Boiler up.
Penn State. Let's go. Penn State is a controversial team because everyone has an opinion about Penn State, right? Like, either Franklin is an incredible coach bringing them, just wait, he's about to do it. They're about to break out. And with this new playoff format, they're going to be there year in and year out. And they just need that to get to that next level. Or you're like me and you're super skeptical and you think maybe with this new Big Ten, they're going to be playing not second fiddle, but like tertiary fiddle. They'll be out in the garage practicing while we're all watching the big show inside. So I'm a little bit lower on Penn State than some. I'm curious your thoughts on Penn State this year. Their win total comes in right at 9.5 with, over at -172. So people think they're going to win 10 games. To make the playoff is at -142. Yes. So people think they're going to make the playoff. Where are you on this Penn State team?
I don't know. I go back and forth because I want to believe in Drew Aller and I still believe in the talent. And he wasn't efficient, in terms of being explosive, but he took care of the ball. He hasn't had the fall apart season, but very reminiscent of DJ U in that it's oh, that was cool. He didn't completely fall apart for much of the season. That's great. But he also didn't take the top off of defenses single-handedly and throw people open and look like the ceiling that we should be seeing from a 5-star talent yet. And so that's where I have questions. I have questions about the offense. Where I don't have questions is on their defense, because they have, like basically the next Micah Parsons to come out of Penn State is on the team already, and Abdul Carter has been more of a off-ball linebacker in previous years, but he's converted to defensive end. That was kind of talked about early this spring, confirmed by multiple teammates that I talked to at the NFL Combine. He was excited about the transition. Looked really strong there in the spring as well. And so, like, I mean, his pass rush pressure rate was like 20-something% last year as more of like a box defender. And when you pair him up with the Denied Dennis Sutton on the other side, they're going to have one of the best edge rushing duos in the country, both of whom could be early round selections in the NFL draft. So that tandem mixed with really strong safety play, the defense is going to keep them in basically every single game and probably just absolutely crush the vast majority of their schedule by themselves. And so, like Kevin Winston Jr. safety, like he might be a top 5 player at his position in the country too. So I think that fixes a lot of the things. But we talked about it in brief before. I just have major questions with the offensive skill position outside of the running backs. So I mean, like, where are you? Because I go back and forth. Like, there's so many things that are good. They should make the playoffs. They would have been in the playoff before. But where are you today with them?
So first, like, I love how you started this. I think you got to talk about the defense first. When I was like prepping for the show and looking at some of these stats for Penn State just from last year, it's absolutely insane. They've gone 17. I mean, this isn't just from last year. This extends to the year before. 17 games in a row where they have not allowed more than 24 points. In today's college football, that's going to keep you in a hell of a lot of games. That'll keep you in every game unless you're Iowa. They led the nation in sacks with 48. They led Power 5 in tackles for loss with 101. And they were best in the nation with only allowing 223 yards per game. Again, they got to play Iowa. That helps. But this defense is elite, and I don't think that's going to change under this current regime. I share your concern when it comes to the offense, but I do think there's hope because I am a huge believer in their new offensive coordinator coming over from Kansas, Andy Kotelinke. If you look at some of Kansas's numbers from the last couple years, so in the last 3 years where he was there, they have been 12th in the country in explosive plays, plays of 20 plus yards, 15th in plays of 30 plus yards, 11th in play of 40 plus yards. I know those are kind of correlated statistics, but still, like, it just shows that his offenses scheme people open. That's what we know about Kansas. He now, in theory, has higher skilled players, like higher recruited players, higher star athletes. And I'm so curious to see how he can utilize this incredible running attack with Allen and Singleton, a 5-star quarterback with Drew Allar. And then, I think maybe not extremely exciting wide receiver core. I know you and I are curious to see what Julian Fleming is, but to me, the hope in this offense is not Drew Allar. It's, will Franklin allow his new offensive coordinator to execute the scheme? And I think he will. And that's why I've kind of changed my mind on Penn State. I was more like thinking, no, I don't think they're going to make the playoff. No, I don't think they're going to hit their win total. But the more I've thought about this change of offensive philosophy, I'm hoping bringing him in is a change of pace. And where I have doubts with Clemson because I didn't see it last year, this first year, I'm hoping with this change we see a jump. So that's kind of where I'm at. I've kind of moved Penn State up and up and up as the kind of as the season has drawn closer and closer.
Yeah, and I will say right now, I would say playoff, but I go back and forth with them, so there's hesitation. I think that things are in place with the coordinator, like you said, with the defense, with Aller maybe taking one more step. I really love the running backs in Singleton and Katron Allen, and actually Quentin Martin as well as like the heir to the throne there. I think I have him more than any other true freshman in all of my Campus Dick and Nerdy Fantasy League. So hopefully he pans out too. But Julian Fleming and Caden Saunders and Harrison Wallace and Marty Evans. Like we talked about them. And I mean, Tyler Warren at the tight end. Like they have skill position like potential too. So and the schedule is doable. Like it's beatable. Like on the schedule you have Kent State, who
I'm pulling it up right here for you, Travis.
I mean, oh man, oh my gosh. So like West Virginia, we can talk about that in a second. That's going to be tough. It's West Virginia at West Virginia in week 1. But Bowling Green, doable. Kent State is one of the worst teams in the country and lost their best interior defensive tackle. We were actually just talking about that in the DM group earlier today because CJ West went to Indiana. But the 2 wins easy. Illinois, they should take care of business. They haven't in the past, that 9 overtime game, but they should.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah. UCLA, they should take care of business. Like UCLA might be the worst team in the Big Ten. Like I'm not really sure about them at all. USC, offense is good. Defense is still bad. Wisconsin, no idea what they are. They could definitely take care of business there. We could seriously be talking about a 7-0 Penn State when they get to Ohio State. And maybe they only lose that one and they go 11-1. That's in the cards. Like the ceiling for them is probably 11-1. But they have to get past West Virginia this week, which is not a given. And so that's coming up this week. And West Virginia was like on the chopping block last year.
Right.
And like the head coach was supposed to be out, like the ultra hot seat, Bernil Brown. But then Garrett Green went off. And then like more than one running back and CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White look like the real deal. And they've got decent skill position players. And look, they have one of the best defensive or offensive lines in the country. Like Wyatt Milam at left tackle might be a top 40, 50 pick in next year's draft. Like he's very, very good. And so up and down the roster, you're like, oh my gosh, West Virginia is all of a sudden talented. And so that if they just stay in the game, that could be a problem for Penn State. And what looked like a super hopeful, like this is finally it, like it turns into a James Franklin needs to be fired conversation next week. Like, and
like I'll be banging that drum, Travis.
Oh
I'll be right there. But you know what? The smartest thing to do is if West Virginia does win, is that's when you bet Penn State to make the playoff. Because the number will be way better, and still they only need to win every game except for Ohio State. They'll be favored in every game except for Ohio State. I do want you mentioned Drew Allar in earlier, and I want to spend a little bit of time on him. Of course, the quarterback position gets a lot of scrutiny, and rightfully so. Drew Allar, you look at his numbers statistically, and one of the things that's impressed me the most is that in 23 games where he has taken a snap, he has thrown only 2 interceptions. And we're talking about like 270 pass attempts. So like clearly able to take care of the football. But again, does he have maybe not the ability is the wrong word, because I do think he has that, but does he have the mindset? Does he have the green light from the coach to actually throw the ball downfield when he needs to? Can Penn State go vertical when they need to with Drew Allar? Again, he was the first quarterback in the 2022 class. He was a 5-star recruit. We've talked about this. When you look at these numbers, there's a lot to see that's like encouraging. But then I get a little bit nervous. That completion percentage is a little bit low. You don't see a lot of explosive plays from this offense in the passing game. Do you think that they can overcome that?
I think so, but he has got to actually unleash it down the field and use some of the traits that he has. Because we talked about DJ U dinking and dunking this past week against Georgia Tech.
Similar.
And his average depth of target, Drew Allar, that is, last year was shorter than what we just saw out of DJU this past week. And so he just needs to unleash, man. Just
how much is that his coaching staff?
It has to be a lot. And James Franklin, made fun of a couple of reporters who had questions about uncorking it last year and just airing it out some. But man, like if you look at the target distribution, like downfield last year, beyond like 20 yards, there were 36 of his almost 400 pass attempts went beyond 20 yards downfield. Like that's we're not talking about 50-yard bombs. We're just talking about beyond 20 yards.
That's downfield. Not a lot. I'm not good at math, but that's a small number.
Yeah, it's not very high. And so way less than 10% of your pass attempts are going even beyond 20 yards downfield, and you got this guy with a rocket for an arm. Like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like almost half of everything went short, like under 10 yards. And like, I mean, like there was like 100+ pass attempts that were like under 10 yards, middle of the field. Like that's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
most boring offense of all time. And so just do something creative with this talent.
Yeah, and I'm really so when I started with RotoViz, the first college football show I did, one of my co-hosts, Jordan Hoover, is a huge Penn State fan. And for his sake, I hope they let the new OC cook because I think Drew Allar could be fun. And I think he could make guys like Julian Fleming uh, into household names if they let him.
Yeah, exactly. Because when he did target people downfield, especially like down in like dead center, I feel like he was actually really deadly, accurate downfield passer. So let's just see more of it this year. Let's see it happen. Let's see Penn State go 11-1 and make the playoff. That would be a lot of fun.
I'll lose some money on some future bets I have, but that's okay. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Travis, I want to talk about some NFL draft prospects that, we've kind of touched on a few of these players before, but I kind of want to get your thoughts a little bit deeper. And some of them have really, really big games coming up. These first two quarterbacks face off against each other. And I want to start with Garrett Nussmeyer for LSU. Huge game against USC. I kind of feel like the media, like while the line is not crazy, like the amount of confidence I'm hearing that LSU is just going to win this game no matter what is crazy. And that's got to be a lot of pressure on Garrett Nussmeyer. What do you think about him, though, just as a prospect? We mentioned him in our, top 10 quarterbacks for next year, and he's high on the list. What are your thoughts on him?
Oh man, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, but I really do believe in his traits and his talent, and I love that he actually stuck it out this long. He could have gone somewhere else and started and
Yeah,
had an opportunity, but instead he chose to stay and has been rewarded with this huge opportunity. And they've got a really fun, talented wide receiver group. They have one of the best offensive lines, maybe top 5 offensive line in the sport. Will Campbell and Emory Jones around him, and what he's done in terms of airing it out in like a small sample, like last year in the bowl game and spring games. He's been rather efficient at times and really impressive in terms of his downfield passing. Man, I just want to see it all come together with him because he has every bit of every trait that he needs to make it happen. So I'm kind of like, hey, if he puts it all together this year, he could be a first round pick. If he doesn't, and he has an even like above average year, he could still be a day 2 pick. And so, or come back and try again next year with or still again really good surrounding cast.
yeah,
It's definitely not a given that he's going to beat USC this week, but it's a great matchup to just see where he is, where the offense is. Because yes, USC doesn't have a great defense, but they've got an okay defensive front with headed up by Bear Alexander, and maybe there's going to be some pressure. He might be without Chris Hilton Jr. this week, so he's going to have to lean into Kyron Lacy, who he knows from last year's squad, but also new wide receiver and CJ Daniels from Liberty, Kyle Parker, who missed a lot of time last year, not much action. Who could be his third wide receiver this week. So it's not a given that LSU is going to win. It's 4.5 points, and it's about 60% implied probability, just over that maybe at most books. But I like this as like a real good feeler test game for Nussmeyer, even Miller Moss too.
yeah. I'm leaning LSU in that one, but you did just mention Miller Moss. Let's talk about him. I mean, his last game he played, he was the man in that bowl game with 6,000 yards and 472 touchdowns.
Yeah, something like that.
He balled out. But this LSU defense, um, I'm, is this just like a definite over game for you? Because I feel like I'm leaning over on this one, which definitely means the under is going to hit. But Miller
Mhm.
Moss is ready to take the reins here of a Lincoln Riley offense. Lincoln Riley sets his quarterbacks up for success. That's got to be good for Miller Moss. I don't know if it necessarily translates to wins. If Caleb Williams can't win him a bunch of games, can Miller Moss? I don't know, but he can probably put up a bunch of numbers. What do
Yes.
we need to see from Miller Moss to see USC win games, and B, draft
Yeah.
capital? Like, is he someone who could be a riser as we go throughout the season on draft boards? I mean, future draft boards.
Maybe not. I mean, he's eligible technically, so maybe not
But
future.
he's not gonna be one and
No,
done.
probably not. But he has a decent surrounding cast. I mean, you and I both really love Zachariah Branch,
Best
Deuce
wide
Robin.
receiver. Best wide receiver in the game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's just electric. Jacoby Lane is actually the coaching staff there really loves him. He should emerge as like probably the wide receiver 2, maybe over Deuce Robinson even. And Deuce Robinson's really talented by his own right. Mekhi Lemon looks like he's probably going to be another dude for them. And then Kyron Ware Hudson, I guess he goes by Kyron Hudson now. He's about as talented as a wide receiver 5 as you can get. So they have a bunch of talent around him. Offensive line, I have questions because Jonah Monheim just moved to center from tackle, and he's probably their best bet. I get maybe moving him there makes sense just for some continuity and leadership. The guy who touches the ball every snap, but
Right.
Offensive line is not perfect, but I do like the over as well. Whatever it is, like just jack it up to
Smash.
105 points, something like that.
Outline it, ladder it,
Yes.
whatever you got to do. Go.
No, but in all seriousness, because LSU's defense ranked outside the top 100 in a lot of key areas, and so I think people are going to see LSU and think that this is Miller Moss just crushed LSU. This is a huge test game. He looks like a real deal, and if he does go off, I'm not ranking him super high on my draft boards yet, but I am intrigued though if he goes off against LSU because LSU's got a really unproven secondary. I mean, Ashton Stamps has been like the CB1 candidate this year in camp. His teammates are really high, coaching staff's really high on him. Sage Ryan and Major Burns are super talented athletes as well, and Ryan's probably going to be more of a corner this year. Burns is in that star role for Blake Baker, but the safeties are a real question. Like Jordan Allen, super inexperienced, like had less than 100 snaps last year. Jordan Gilbert, Texas A&M transfer, he actually came over. Actually, last year he missed a bunch of time. He played like 700 snaps the previous season for Texas A&M, but again, coming off an injury season, a bunch of new moving pieces and a new defensive system. Yes, I like Harold Perkins, but the defensive line as well has questions. Like I don't like any of them. Braden Swinson had a decent pass rush pressure rate, but off the edge. But Jaden Guillory is like Jacoby and Guillory is like the most proven guy. Gio Paez, the transfer. I like the freshman more than anybody else in Dominic McKinley, but he's not going to star immediately for them. So they have questions at least the first and third levels of the defense. Like I like Penn and Perkins, but defensive tackle, edge, real problems. Back end of their secondary, real problems. Way outside the top 100 in a lot of key categories last year. So we might see explosive performances from both Nussmeyer and Miller Moss, which is why I'm excited to watch it. And I'm excited that it's in prime time.
This is my favorite game for the weekend. Most excited about this game. And probably because I'm smashing the over. Yes, those are the type of games I like. I don't want to see Iowa versus Wisconsin, a 17-3 game.
No.
Give me 46-43. Classic barn burner,
Yes.
no defense. Let's go. Hey, Notre Dame has a huge test this weekend against Texas A&M, and I think I know that you love Jeremiah Love, running back, Notre Dame. Talk to us a little bit about him. Partially talk to me about him because I do have in the one C2C league that I'm still in, Jeremiah Love is my dude. So I'm excited for this.
I wonder if you have him because I liked him and I talked him up and then you sniped me anyway.
Absolutely 100% yes.
Because I have over 50% exposure to Jeremiah Love and just fair transparency here as I'm about to talk him up.
Right?
Yeah, he was a top 100 recruit in the country coming in as a running back. He was a little bit undersized, but he's beefed up a little bit now. And he was working with the wide receivers some in the spring because he got kind of like the green light to say you don't even need to freaking practice running back anymore. You've perfected the game. So he's been working as a wide receiver to work on. Yeah, we're working at it. Just hey, look, we're gonna find ways to get you the ball no matter what. In the spring game, it was the Jeremiah Love show. Marcus Freeman, when they interviewed him in the middle of the spring game, he's like, "Yeah, really loved what's going on. And man, if we can just get Jeremiah Love more touches, we'll be good to go." Something like that. It was the quote, and it was just like, yes, yeah. And I like Jadarian Price, who's had struggles with staying healthy, behind him in that backfield too. Riley Leonard is a fun dual threat quarterback that I think adds a little stress to the defense in terms of reading who's going to actually have the ball. So I think his offensive efficiency is going to see an uptick this year. And Jeremiah Love is going to be the feature back with Jadarian Price in the mix as well. But Love can just do every single thing they want, and he's got real track speed. So they're going to need to lean on him this year. They like their wide receiver group. We just had Ryan Roberts on our show recently, and he's covered Notre Dame quite a bit. He's really high on Chris Mitchell, the transfer from Florida International, Jordan Faison, the lacrosse player, Jaden Greathouse, Bo Collins came over from Clemson. Jaden Thomas, even like they've got a surprisingly fun wide receiver group with two freshmen, and Cam Williams and Micah Gillard, who had great springs and off seasons as well. Like really just bizarre depth there with Mitchell Evans at tight end. I just like a lot of the things on offense. They're going to be starting a freshman at left tackle now, which isn't ideal.
Right.
But if that works out, Jeremiah Love is going to absolutely ball, and I'm going to love it. So,
yeah, I'm here for it. And this Notre Dame offense could actually take a step forward. It's really easy for me to kind of forget that the NFL and college football are two extremely different sports. And you can be an exceptional college quarterback and be a terrible NFL quarterback. Hello, Tim Tebow. And Riley Leonard could be one of those guys too, where he sets his offense up for success without never being great. But Jeremiah Love could be a huge beneficiary of that. Another guy who could be a beneficiary of a really solid quarterback who's been there, done that with Graham Mertz is Eugene Wilson III, running back for Florida here. Talk to me about him.
Wide receiver, you mean? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, wide receiver. But like he kind of reminds me of like Percy Harvin, where they get him involved in a lot of different ways. See him on the like the end around, the motion snaps. See him running the ball, a lot of those little toss ups. That they're technically forward pass, but it's just a element of the run game.
Yeah, a lot of key like true freshman metrics that matter in terms of predicting future NFL draft capital. He checked those boxes last year, earning decent market share right out of the gate for Florida. And the depth chart this week has him again, of course, as a starter, and he should have a significant role. I like the transfer Elijah Badger, who came over from Arizona State, but I think he should be kind of like the go-to wide receiver one, with regardless of who it is, and Graham Mertz or the true freshman DJ Uiagalelei. Eventually. I think that he's going to find a bunch of production and a bunch of force-fed targets where they're trying to find just ways to get him in space because he can add a lot of yak. So really, really high on Eugene Wilson for Florida, even though Florida as a whole might struggle this year.
Well, yeah, I think that's kind of the narrative. Like they have a really, really tough schedule, but Josh Pate, this is one of my like favorite Pateisms is like you only play one game a week. Like you're not playing all 12 games of your schedule like the same week. And like any given week, I can see Florida beating the team opposite them because they do have so much skill at so many different positions. And so it'll be fun to see what they end up being able to achieve.
And against Miami.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on Florida to cover, but the line's a little it's pretty short. But
yeah,
I'm going to be wrong on Miami. I'm so low on Miami.
Yeah, I mean, they've got decent skill. I mean, I'm excited to see what that offense actually looks like because Samuel Brown came over from Houston. A lot of people are really high on him. And they already have Restrepo and George there at wide receiver. Right. And the true freshmen in JoJo Trader and Nikar are electric, and we'll see if they get some decent shots to have snaps in week one as well. But then Damian Martinez at running back, Cam Ward, a lot of people are high on him at quarterback. So there's just a bunch of intriguing draft prospects in this game beyond just Eugene, Trey Wilson as he goes by. So on the other side of the ball, on the other sideline, that is.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the other side of the ball with Shemar James, linebacker for the Florida Gators. Absolute stud. Talk to me a little bit about this guy.
Yeah, so Shemar James, and again, I'm a little biased because I have some really weird fantasy leagues. Let's be real. I'm a super ultra nerd, and I've rostered Shemar
No,
James for
no,
more
not
than
you.
2 years.
Not you,
Uh,
Travis.
yeah, I've rostered Shemar James for more than 2 years actually already, and in a fantasy league because I play in really odd best ball with full individual defensive player rosters. With you start 22 players, it's dumb. But
Of course
anyway,
you do.
of course I
Of
do.
course you do.
But yeah, but Shemar James was a really high pedigree guy who came in and found immediate snaps on Florida's defense because he was just too good to keep off the field. So even as a true freshman, he was already up to like 50 total tackles last year in a shorter amount of games because he wasn't always healthy. Still over 50 tackles and a higher tackle for loss rate. A bunch of key rate stats were much better for him. And so I'm really excited to see what he has this year in his junior season. He should be one of the best off-ball linebackers in the country. So if he can be a difference maker, getting in the backfield, getting after the passer, and being able to drop into coverage and cover like your team slot wide receiver, like he can do anything. So he might be the key to the victory if there is one to be had for Florida.
Do you see him as a day one type guy?
Potentially, linebackers.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough anymore for
Unless the
linebackers to go
Seattle
early.
Seahawks take you. You know,
Yeah,
like
but I
they
would
like a
say he's
linebacker.
certainly in the mix for day 2 capital
Yeah,
at the very least.
that's great. Travis, we've talked about a bunch of teams. We talked about a bunch of players. We just finished up talking a bunch of Florida Gators here. Real quick, put you on the spot here. Miami or Florida this weekend in the swamp?
Oh man, I'm just gonna say Miami, just because I like the talent that they've been amassing, and I think that Florida is just a ticking time bomb. There's just so much kind of like an inevitability that feels like it's right there that
Yeah,
they're just gonna fail. Like, and even when in just recent years they just find creative ways to blow it.
yeah.
So
I mean,
Napier, I want to root for him, and I want it to work out, and I want DJ Lagway specifically to work out as well because like he's like my favorite quarterback in this true freshman class. But this weekend, I picked Miami.
yeah, and the line's only 2.5. Like it's a really short line, which kind of surprised me.
Yep, and
So
I
it's hard
like
to find a real angle there. Yeah,
yeah, I like Miami to cover 2.5 points there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty much the same as the money line. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
Well, that's awesome, Travis. It's been so good talking college football with you. We've got week 1 days away. I mean, Colorado plays tomorrow. This is exciting stuff. So we're right here. We will be right here with you throughout the whole season with Total College Football, where we cover everything. That's why it's called Total College Football. There's not a topic that we are afraid to handle. Travis brings you the deep nerddom that we all love and appreciate. So thank you so much, Travis, for your insight. It's always good talking college football with you.
absolutely. Be looking for another episode of Total College Football here very soon. You can find me on Twitter at FF_Travis M. You can find Stefan at Stefan Lako. And like, rate the pod wherever you listen, and subscribe, all the things. Share with a friend. This is a new show, but glad to be talking college football with you all. Be looking for another episode here soon of Total College Football.